In today's episode of the Positive Worth podcast, I continue my Interesting People I Know series with entrepreneurs Carl Duper and Michael Moore. Carl left a hospital CEO position to start a laundry and cleaning business, and Michael Moore followed him some months later, leaving his own healthcare leadership position to become the first franchisee of Carl's business, Tidy Task. I'm really excited for you to learn more as you follow along in today's episode. I'm James Oliver, your host, and you've just joined me on a journey of holistic learning where I talk to people about the 5 F's in their life: field, family, finance, fitness, and faith. Like, share, and subscribe to help the algorithm, and you can check out the Patreon page by searching for Positive Worth. And now, to kick us off, Michael Moore.
I became the first franchise owner of Tidy Task in Daytona Beach, Florida in 2023, just the beginning of the year. Um, let's see. I'm also involved in a local not-for-profit, really involved in serving at my church. But a lot of the motivations for me coming into this new world, new lifestyle, has been family oriented. And I know we'll get into that in that section
Yeah,
of
we will, for
everything,
sure.
but that's who I am.
I'm Carl Duper. Number one, I'm a dad, and that's like my favorite title. I also started Tidy Task. I'm the owner of Tidy Task Denver and run that operation, and then the owner of Tidy Task Franchising as well.
Carl, did you start Tidy Task?
I did. Yep. Yeah. So it was, really just an idea and to dive maybe down to the field.
Yeah.
Question or topic, we could start there because that's really the beginning of this story. Tidy Task is a cleaning and laundry business that does it better than all of the franchises that were built and grew in the 90s. So we're tech forward, we're customer service forward, and the whole goal of Tidy Task is to make delegating 8 hours of chores per week as easy as sending a text message or clicking 3 times in an app. I started this business because I needed it desperately. And so, going back down the field route, it was 3 years ago now that I was the CEO of a hospital. My wife was the pastor of a 1,400 member church. She was 6 months pregnant, and we continually looked at each other in the middle of our insanely busy weeks saying, what happens 3 months from now when there's a little human being here that needs all of our time, all of our attention, and we just reject the idea that we're going to delegate the care of that human being to anyone else. Like we both want this, and we've wanted it for a long time. And so that led us down to temporary fixes to get time back, which was hiring a housekeeper for ourselves. We got HelloFresh and delegated grocery shopping. We had a laundry service come pick up and deliver from our doorstep. And that's where the idea started. But there was a lot of annoying things about that process. My housekeeper only wanted to text. My laundry service only wanted me to use a terrible, terrible app that they obviously paid someone $500 to develop and slap their brand on. And
Okay.
HelloFresh, is its own entity. And so you'd spend enough time managing each of these, and the house cleaner would ask if she could come on Thursday instead of Tuesday. And all of these problems that arose, I said, this can certainly be done better. And all of these things have something in common, which is time and creating freedom of time for people that don't have it. Ultimately, that vision and wanting to be a dad first over any professional endeavor is what led me down the path of starting Tidy Task, moving back to Denver, Colorado. Now I'm in Loveland, which is actually right where I grew up. And we haven't looked back.
So, Michael, same question to you. What do you do?
Yeah, so I've always thought of myself as an operator, and not as much as the brainchild creator. There's certain people like Carl that can write a business plan on the back of a napkin. I'm more of the second step person where if you hand me the napkin, we can figure something out. We can make it work.
Okay.
And so I had really never thought of franchising. I had never sought out opportunities for franchising. Um, Similar to Carl, I was in a very, I was in a position in healthcare that was demanding in the first year of my son's life. Lots going on there. And I kind of just started to take stock of where I was at, where my priorities were at. And Carl and I had always shared similar values. We had similar positions in healthcare. We've kind of just been very like minded through our careers. And so I connected with him, asking kind of for his thoughts and advice. And when he told me about what he was working on, um, I thought, why stop with just the healthcare, following in his footsteps? Like, what if I were to do something similar here in Daytona Beach? Um, and so I just kind of blurted out, "Hey, have you ever thought about franchising your business?" Funny enough, I think the week previous, the trademark approval had come through for Tidy Task. So it was a timely discussion. There was no pushiness on his end at all, but it was value wise where I wanted to head. So we figured it out. I exited my healthcare career, and now I'm running a local franchise for Tidy Task in this area. Um, Same business model, different area, different challenges, but it's working, and that's the most exciting part for me.
That's wild. So that's pretty providential timing, it sounds like, where you're just getting this harebrained idea. You think of, why don't you franchise this? And then Carl's like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, so just to be clear, you're talking about the trademark coming through, but Carl, was there an intention in there to franchise?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it goes straight into like God's timing in all of this business and how his fingerprints are in every corner of this thing,
Mm.
mostly in the just meeting the right people at the right time.
Wow.
And this is certainly one of those scenarios. So my goal with Tidy Task day one was always, this is not going to be a Carl Duper business. This is going to be a systems and processes business. And if it's a systems and processes business, that uncaps what you can potentially do from a growth perspective. Um, Personally, it means with your own operation, you could hire a GM and train all of the systems and processes so that one day you could be an owner that doesn't even dive into the day to day. But certainly a part of that early days process was, okay, how do we want to grow this? And franchising continually stood out as the perfect mix of what I wanted. Like, we could easily grow Tidy Task with a branch model and hire a GM of this desirable area, and grow it nationally with employees. But what stands out to me so much about the franchising model is the incentives are directly aligned with why I started the business. And there's full risk and full reward. And so a franchisee like myself is only eating what they kill. And if you're in that
Hmm.
mindset, you're going to be more successful. And bottom line, it means from a governance structure perspective, um, I'm not responsible for Tidy Task Daytona. Michael is ultimately responsible, and he's succeeding because he says, "I'm the owner here, and I'm making it happen." Um, this is a long answer to the short question. The short answer is, from day one, I knew that this was going to be a model that I wanted to reproduce all over the United States, and franchising really just stood out as the best option. And when Michael reached out, I, like he said, just completed trademarking, the branding, and all that, the steps before the steps of franchising, but had also reached out to an awesome group, Franchise Marketing Systems, that walks businesses through the franchising process for the first time. So guys like me that would have taken 2 or 3 years to do it by myself, now it was done in a succinct, legal, well done manner, so that all of us can feel comfortable that this thing's ready to grow.
You both mentioned when you were talking different aspects of how faith had tied into this and what you're doing. Michael, back to you. What role has faith played in what you have done up till this point in your life and what you are doing right now and moving forward?
Yeah. So I always think of terms like core values and things like that as maybe secondary to my actual beliefs doctrinally. So, but I'm going to use the core values framework for a quick second because that's where I was operating prior to, I think, this year. So service was always something that I really held close and really wanted to prioritize, whether that was at church, whether that was with friends, helping someone move, or even the work that I was doing. I wanted to know that my work was translating to impact to an individual, even if it's just one individual. I continually found in the healthcare environment that for me, in the roles that I found myself in, I couldn't directly impact the consumer, but a handful of times. And where my impact was being felt was in the teams that I, was a leader for, or colleagues, or even bosses and things like that. I was able to serve those individuals. But when I looked at where the greatest need was, it was with the end user in that was coming into the hospitals, into the urgent cares. And so that bug to be able to go out there and create something of value for a customer that's coming and exchanging their funds, their hard-earned funds for that value, that was something that was really intriguing to me all along. But as I started to I started to dive into scripture really heavily in 2021 and 2022 and realized I wanted to make sure that I was seeking out truth, not just based on what experiences I had found myself in, or what I had been taught my whole life, although a lot of that has been really pivotal and crucial to my understanding today. I've come to really trust that what the Bible says is true, and that scripturally based doctrinal beliefs are really important. So, through this process of kind of changing career trajectory and everything, I've been able to have the opportunity to also address my just how I lead my family spiritually. And that's been super important for me because I don't think there is a greater responsibility, even out serving the world. My family needs to receive the best of me. I need to be that spiritual model for them. And so through that, we, over the last 12 months, really have prioritized finding a biblical church that we could call home, and really studying the word. And part of that is with the pursuit of, we know, through the experiences that we've had, and that in the last couple of years, I believe my eyes were open to who God really is. I think that it took me a little bit longer than it might have taken some people, but in 2020, I had that realization, like I am inadequate, but Christ is adequate. More than adequate, I should say. He's sufficient. So that is the justification process that the Bible talks about. So Romans 5:1 is a verse that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Essentially, we have been justified and have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. We've been justified by faith through Jesus Christ, right? So the response to that is then to seek to be more like Christ. And that's through the process of sanctification. So there's the initial justification and then sanctification. And I'm going to bring it back around and not be too deep here. But,
Okay. All right. Yeah.
the process of sanctification, I believe, is in allowing your circumstances that God, if he's written the story from the beginning, which is what the Bible says, allowing those circumstances to unfold and make me more like him is the most important thing that I can do. And that involves leading my family spiritually. That involves seeking out true knowledge of what the Word of God says and really prioritizing that and God and my relationship with him above all else. So I believe I could have done a lot of those things in the lifestyle I was living, the career lifestyle I was living before. But to see even just the trajectory of spiritual growth that I've been able to have in the past year because of prioritizing that outside of where I might have had misaligned priorities before, putting some things ahead of some other things. Um, it's been amazing to be able to see how God has been changing me through this process, making me uh, a little bit more selfless, a little bit more concerned about others, and not just serving for what I can get out of it, but also serving because I want to be like Jesus. I want to love people like he does. So um, again, that maybe is the generic version. I certainly want to make sure that I am continually growing in that sanctification and becoming more like Christ. And I don't think the entrepreneurial lifestyle is necessary for that, but it has been extremely helpful for me and driven me in these decisions.
So, so back to the question then of how faith has informed what you've done and what you're doing. What I heard you saying is entrepreneurial work has enabled or has been somewhat of a catalyst to focusing more time on your faith. But you were saying, you could have done much of this in your previous career. It's not that would have been a bad thing, right? But you find yourself capable of doing more of that now in your new franchise owner status.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah. So, for example, there's a local nonprofit that I've been involved with for a little while. It serves fatherless youth, fatherless young men in our area. And I've been very interested in being involved in that since I heard of it back in 2021. And I've been able to carve out space in my schedule in my week to be able to serve consistently in that organization, and that wouldn't have been possible in the lifestyle that I was in before. We have several different community fellowship groups through our church that we've been involved with. And that has given me an opportunity to even see what it looks like to lead your family spiritually, because there are people who do that much better than I do. And I've gotten to be able to interact with them.
Yeah. Now, I've told people, I told you before when we were on the phone setting up for this, that I don't want you to be afraid to make shameless plugs for things that you're interested in, including your business. If you've got people in your area that are interested in what it sounds like the kind of churches that you're going to, where is this church? What's it called?
Yeah. So the church we attend is called Riverbend Community Church, and it's in Ormond Beach, Florida.
Say it one more time where it is.
Yeah, it's in Ormond Beach, Florida.
Ormond Beach. I was going to say Orvin. I was like, not quite. There you go.
Just north of Daytona. And then the not-for-profit is called No Longer Fatherless. So pretty easy to remember there. That's the mission, is to make sure that young men know that they're no longer fatherless. They have a father figure through mentorship in their lives, but also to exemplify that their heavenly Father does care for them as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Carl, what about you? Because with your wife being a pastor, I'd imagine there's a little bit of discussion surrounding faith in your family. But how has,
Yeah,
for you personally, how has faith informed what you've done and what you are now doing?
definitely. I mean, when I think of my whole walk with Christ, like there's a clear high point. You go through highs and lows in your spiritual journey, and for me, the high point was a year that I spent in Pohnpei, Micronesia, teaching high school kids, and that year is in college. It was also went through a messy breakup, went through all types of health challenges. I tore my ACL when I was on the island over there, and it was the most variable time of my life. I had the least amount of control about what I ate, for example. Like, there's a ship that came over from Asia once a month, and once the grocery store started running out of the things you like, you ate what was left on the island. Like, from a safety perspective, there's all there's all sorts of things. Like, dogs over there are not dogs over here. And if you're walking down the street to go grab groceries or whatever, you better be on the lookout. I think it's no coincidence that the moment in that time period in my life where I had the least amount of control over all of these things also happened to be the moment in my life where walking with God was like an absolute necessity, right? Like, because there's so many things. It's like, God, like, I know there's a pack of 5 dogs back in there. Like, can you help me out, today? And um, on the entrepreneurship journey, it is much more variable than your standard 9 to 5. It's actually a huge reason why I went this route, because I don't do well with mundane or kind of the monotonous consistency of a 9 to 5 space. What that has led to, just as a byproduct, is most days I go into with a directionally correct plan of what's going to get done that day, but there's so much open space for God to work, and he does. And that's the coolest thing, is like when that open space is created in your life, um, you start seeing those instances all over the place, like me and Michael's reconnection just at the opportune moment when it was perfectly timed for us to take this step together. We're chatting with more franchisees that have similar stories to, like, finding out that this exists and pursuing it. And it's I don't know. I just see God and his fingerprints all over my life and all over this business. And I just saw that way less often. Not because it doesn't happen, um, but much more is controlled. And you know that would be how I'd summarize it.
Do you see a connection when you're looking at your faith journey? Sometimes God lets us walk down paths because we're too stubborn to go the direction we should go, and I don't feel like I have suffered too much from being too stubborn, but I do feel like God has put me down certain paths in my life professionally to prepare me to be ready for the next thing, where it's I wasn't ignoring a calling, I wasn't saying no to something. I just, maybe it is a form of stubbornness. My mind just wasn't open up to the possibility. I mean, I'll say that about HR. Never in my life would I have said, yes, I'm going to do HR. And yet HR was such an unbelievably fulfilling career choice for the last 7 years. Um, I'd have to say that apart from the freedom of how I control my time now, I'm not even opposed to doing HR in the future. It's just not my plan right now. And if, so long as we can make ends meet with my business and then do reasonably well from there, I just won't go back because, controlling my time is better. But do you feel like your journey of getting all the way to being a hospital CEO was something that was a result of you being stubborn, or was that just where God needed you to go as a step of the journey?
Yeah, I definitely think it was an important step of the journey. There's many things that I know about business today that I would had no context for whatsoever out of college, right? So out of college, like, yeah, I was reading Entrepreneur Magazine. I was listening to podcasts about starting and running businesses. Like that excited me, and it was just interesting. That was a lifestyle that was um, fascinating to me. But I do think if I started something just straight out of college, I would have made way, way more mistakes. And in entrepreneurship, like mistakes are money. And you make too many, like that can write the end of your entrepreneurial story. And
Well, did you graduate with just tons of money and the ability to just go be an entrepreneur, or
definitely not. Yeah, definitely
okay?
not. And
Because
so
there are things that I wanted to do and I just didn't, simply because I couldn't afford to. I needed to make $12 an hour when I left college to make ends meet because I didn't have any money.
yeah, well, and my journey into healthcare was essentially a story of continually failing upwards. Like I was the student body president at Union College, which is why I applied for a residency at Advent Health. I approached residency at Advent Health with an entrepreneurial mindset, which is like, well, my job is to ask questions and learn as much as I can. So I'm going to do that to the maximum, which meant during those 3 years, I met a ton of people. I created an awesome network and I learned a ton because I approached it as that's what I'm being paid to do here. Um, and I feel like because of that knowledge and approach early on, like that's why at the urgent care business, things went really well. We did a lot of good things, and that led to, the opportunity in the CEO role. And in the CEO role, it was just constant learning. Obviously, like as a 27-year-old kid, James, sitting in the CEO seat, and you can imagine, the learning processes that are happening there. And man, I'm just going to be thankful forever that I went through those learning processes at that age because it's really the only reason I feel like I am able to write a successful entrepreneurial story moving forward.
What did you mean by failing upwards? Because you described some things that you did that most people would say, like, sounds like a pretty successful track and like you did a lot of the right things. Um, was there something else you meant by failing upwards?
Well, it wasn't my plan, I guess is more so the accurate way to say that.
So more your plan failed as opposed to you were incompetent, so they promoted you.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Okay.
wasn't that. Now, I would say like I approach residency differently than I see most people because I was probably a little more cocky and a little more like, well, I hear this doctor is the best one at this, so I'm going to call his office and set up time to go watch him do that surgery. Like that was my approach to residency, which um, I think others are say like, hey, that's a little, a little cocky or a little like aggressive. Um, but so in those aspects, maybe that's why I kind of pose it as failing upwards because I didn't take the standard approach to residency, to my first director of operations job, or the CEO role. Um, I approached it with my knowledge and my value set, and um, sometimes that was a good thing, sometimes it was a bad thing. But I do think it set up the the next stage, and yeah, just gonna always be so thankful for those learning experiences and the knowledge that came along with them.
So both of you have emphasized quite a few things with your faith. Segue and before we segue fully out of that question, I do want to just ask for other people interested in starting a franchise with you. Do you have to be a person of faith, or do you have to be a Christian to use Tidy Task?
Definitely not. No. I I do believe that there's values that, being a part of a Christian community naturally loads some of those things in. But we all know, guys, like that's not a given, right? Just because you're a Christian doesn't make you a good person either. And so I think that, we're just open to good individuals that um, desire freedom of time, like Michael and I initially set out, after this opportunity to find that for ourselves. And then, as with any business, having business experience and acumen and um, knowing how to work with people are obviously all critical skill sets to be successful. Um, but the short answer to your question is no.
And
Yeah.
I'd love to add to that too. So one
I
time,
was going to ask you actually, Michael, because, Carl can say whatever he wants, but then he could be cracking the whip behind the scenes. So
no, it's cool to be in a space as a Christian entrepreneur, I believe, because I got asked one time at a speaking engagement talking about Tidy Task, and somebody asked me, "So how do you reconcile your faith and your values and being kind to others and holding standards of how you operate as a business?" I think the impetus for asking that question was, well, how can you be kind and say no to some people? And the reality is, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there are times where we can't serve everybody. There are also, I would say, in our industry, a lot of expectation resetting that we have to do to let people know, hey, this is what we offer. And if that is something you're excited about, we're super excited to serve you, and you're going to get more than what you paid for. But if that's not something that you're looking for, then there's plenty of other opportunities for you to get your needs met. It just wouldn't be through Tidy Task.
it's funny as an HR person that rarely resonates with me because working for a religious not-for-profit, I fired a lot of Christians, and I felt it was one of the most Christian things to do to help certain people move on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad to say that because, or it feels sad to say that because you are disrupting someone's life, and yet time and time again, I can say that sometimes we ourselves are incapable of moving ourselves on in situations that we should not be in.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask, I am a personal finance nerd. I have to say that really carefully because I'm realizing I'm talking to two actual finance people here. So I didn't go to school for finance, but I've learned a lot about it. I believe one of the most important things a leader can do is understand how their department impacts the bottom line. What little decisions can they make to move the profit margin of their department? Because it's one of those no money, no mission things. This is where I will say I've talked to a lot of people that have felt less excited about, exposing, so to speak, where they're at financially or how finances played a role in this. But I want to ask first, generically, from both of you, how have finances impacted what you've done and what you're now doing?
I'd love to start because then it doesn't seem like Carl is like poking me to say the right things in the background. No,
And we only talked yesterday, so there wasn't enough time to really script this.
Oh yeah, well, you should have heard his call that he gave me after we talked, making sure I stick to the script. Not at all.
What have you done, Michael?
No, the exciting thing and what I want to share about that relationship, like I have so much respect for Carl, and I have been given so many great opportunities because of him. And truly, you're talking about having the right opportunities placed in front of you to be able to do the things that you're actually wanting to do. Without having that conversation with Carl and him telling me about his business, I wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be having this conversation. So I'm very grateful to him, and having aligned values and approaches for how we make money. We found out yesterday we have the same ring light. It's great to be able to have somebody who you can share a relationship with and also have like the cheerleading that goes with running parts of the business together. So that's been really cool. As far as financial, so I'm saying all of that to let you know that I'm speaking for
Yeah, it's
myself.
real big intro. Sounds like you're not telling me something. So
No, not at all. So, personally, I have always thought of personal finance as being highly risk averse. And that has led me to seeking out a stable healthcare career. You know, both of my parents were in healthcare. It was important to me to have a job with benefits and figure all of that out. Um, when I started to kind of look at my financial situation in the last year, and this will lean more towards the family conversation later, but um, I realized we had more margin to be a little bit, uh, in some people's perception, riskier. So, in terms of my family and how we make financial decisions now, I would say that we are looking for the longer term rewards that can come out of taking a short term risk. Did you have a question about that?
well, I mean, for me, it's like the nuts and bolts of finances are the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying a lot of kind of high level things that I can resonate with on a high level, and for me, the nuts and bolts are I'm not making money right now. If I don't start making money soon, I need a job,
Mm-hmm.
and like literally, my scenario is if I don't start making money, then 6 months from now, I have to start working, whether it's Home Depot or Taco Bell or back in a hospital or something. I have to start working. I have to
Yeah.
stop playing entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So when I'm asking about finance, I mean nuts and bolts of this.
Yeah.
Like, did you have ambitions of a dollar amount you were going to make? Do you have ambitions of like how much you want to be making per
Mm-hmm.
month?
So I when I started as a franchise owner, I was in a very similar situation that you're describing, where I saw the runway that I had to start making money. And I also did not want to rely on um, any one piece of income gathering. I wanted to have several streams of income. And so I've sought out different opportunities to be able to create that. The part that I think I enjoy the philosophy around personal finance a little bit more than the actual nuts and bolts as much. So the man, I'm just struggling with this question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, and look, there's no right answer and there's no wrong answer.
Yeah,
I hear the struggle that you're having with how to articulate this, and just know if there's really nothing to say about the finance end of this, there's nothing to say, and that's fine.
yeah,
So, what I'll say is we can jump over to Carl, and if you have a thought at any other point, you're more than welcome to jump in and say, "Oh, yes,
yeah.
that's what it was for me. Like I needed to go to Taco Bell 67 times a month, and that was that's my retirement goal. This is
Yeah.
how I get there."
One thing that I do want to express is that I think I've thought of money more as a tool than as a climbing the ladder in the last 12 months. I used to really kind of ride the roller coaster, essentially, and is what I would describe on how I spent my money and how I uh, just basically what was coming in. Um, Realized, oh man, I haven't been budgeting. We need to now really tighten up. Okay, now we're looking really good. There's a certain dollar amount in the bank account. We can sit back and then just go up and down on that train. When I started as a franchise owner, when I left my 9 to 5, I took a look at the bucket of money that I had and I said, here's the runway that I have before I want to start making consistent money. And I believe that has allowed me to take the margin of profit from running the Tidy Task business and invest it back into itself. So my goal is to be able to do that for at least 15 months of running the business before I start to really take money out. So I have made financial decisions in a variety of different areas in order to do that, found other streams of income so that I can allow the snowball effect to really build up the business to where it's not putting somebody like myself on the payroll. We have plenty of people who depend on the pay in order to do the work for Tidy Task. I don't want myself to be one of those that prevents us from growing as fast as we could.
What are those other streams of income you're talking about?
So some of those I do a little bit of group coaching with an organization that I don't want to plug, but they're a fantastic organization. Um, I also work with the not for profit that I was speaking about. That's a little bit newer. I have been volunteering with them for a little while. This summer, I got my real estate license, so I'm doing some commercial and residential real estate. Um, and to me, all of this is there's similar mindsets in a lot of those things. I think sales is sales, no matter if I'm talking about my faith, if I'm talking about the business that I run or the not for profit that I work for. And I believe in all of these things, and that's what's most important, and that helps me to articulate and create value for somebody else. So rather than having that 9 to 5 chunk being taken away, I've kind of divided myself up into a couple of different categories. And the way that the Tidy Task systems and processes have been built allow me to have that life story. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Perfect. Carl, finance, how has that informed what you've done and what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, the place where the entrepreneurship journey from a finance perspective started for me is just clearly understanding that the decision to own a business versus be an employee for a business is essentially the exact same financial decision as buying the home that you live in or renting the home that you live in. When you buy a home, you put money towards it every month, but you build equity stake that eventually garners a lot of value over time. And one day, if you want to move houses or do something else, you sell this house. And not only, you know, do you benefit from the growth of what you put in every month, but that asset appreciated, given the market or, in housing, typically things are consistent, fairly consistently up and to the right. We're in a weird time right now. I get that. But over time, that's kind of how it works. When you're an employee of a business, your time is purchased by that business. They purchase you and your soul for 40 hours a week, and you give them that. And every 2 weeks, you get a consistent thing, and it feels safe. And it feels awesome because you know exactly how then to go to your personal finances and budget it all out. And now my life is consistent because I know exactly what to expect. I don't think most people realize how much they're leaving on the table by not at least pursuing some form of ownership within their professional life. And I get why people don't. I mean, James, you just started the entrepreneurial journey. What has society told you about being an entrepreneur? Have you heard in your books or podcasts or things that as you decided on that, like, were people telling you it was smart or safe or the right thing to do?
Yeah, definitely not safe. I will say I've always approached things in a thoughtful enough way that when I present it to someone, um, I might be guilty of over presenting it to the point where they're like, well, it sounds like you've really thought this through. Good luck. But certainly what I've heard in general is the idea that, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. And I've certainly met my fair share of entrepreneurs who are doing multiple things because they never got any one thing off the ground. And in general, people have been pretty excited for me, but I also have laid out for people very transparently from the beginning. I started this journey with about the same as Michael, about 16 months. It was about 18 months when I began, that I could be out of work, not earn a single dime, and still walk away without any debt. So Yeah, people
So
have not been too critical of my decision, but there certainly is a lot of inquisition about like, is it really going to work? Aren't you going to have to go get another job at some point?
yeah.
Yeah.
And the stat you just shared, James, is what I've heard over and over and over throughout my corporate life. 9 out of 10 fail. You really think you're going to be the one that makes it, and so there's always just an obvious blaring like path of least resistance is to get a job and just ride that out for 50 years. But bottom line, when I had a fork in the road of am I going to go back into healthcare and or am I going to stay this course or am I going to start my own business? Um, it really boiled down to a do I believe that I'm capable of doing this or not? Do I think that I'm a smart person or not? If I
Mm.
don't, then I should go the corporate route. I should just trade my time for money because that's where I'm going to see the most value. But if I actually believe in myself, if I actually think that I can build something of value, the wealth at the end of this journey is so much greater you can't even compare the two. And it doesn't mean the first year or the first 2 or 3 years isn't scary or roller coaster or you both described your timeline. Same thing for me. I had 18 months after I left my corporate position. Also at the same time I had my first child and I was moving my family across the country. And all these things are happening at the same time. And I said, oh, it was probably a good time to start a business, right? All these, probably not. But I believe that it would work. And I have the best wife in the world that rather than saying, well, why don't we kind of take the safe route? Like you've worked hard for your career. Like when I chose entrepreneurship, her response was essentially like, finally, like I knew this is who you are this whole time. It's just like you finally letting yourself actually be what your skills are actually perfectly tuned for. And so I said, I would tell her 18 months, if this thing is profitable, we'll stay in it. If it's not, I'm going to go back and probably for the rest of my life, I'll trade my time for money and do the employee thing. Um, and the short summary is I'm still here and, we're far past 18 months at this point. And this is the this is the right time in the finance discussion to pivot to um, why I built Tidy Task the way that it is um, from a business model.
I agree with that. Let me just ask one specific question here with your finances. You had an 18-month runway. Was there a time that runway ever got shorter, or did you become profitable before that 18 months and you didn't have to worry about it?
Yeah, we were profitable before that 18 months. So it didn't come down to like the Indiana Jones Boulder 1 month behind me situation. It wasn't that dramatic story. That'd probably be better for a podcast, but that wasn't my story. And it's because like as I built the business model, risk aversion is something that is like tuned into my soul. My mom is a CPA. She's been a CPA for her entire career. That meant me and my brother at 8 years old were forced to open a checking account, and we were forced to at least purchase one item with that checking account every month so that at the end of the month, we could go through the practice of balancing our checkbook and show her how we did that. And
Wow.
that probably tells
What's the smallest check you ever wrote?
Yeah, probably in the cents category. And,
Okay.
it says back in the 90s where you're getting, your pack of gum for 25 cents. So, I mean, I feel bad for the owners that I did that to. Now as a
Stood there for
company
20
that
minutes
doesn't
writing the
accept.
check.
Exactly. Exactly. But um, just because I pursued entrepreneurship doesn't mean like I threw all that to the wind. But what you hear about entrepreneurship would tell the average person, oh wow, he took a huge financial risk, and like it's really scary, and I wonder what his family thinks. I wonder, all these things. Um, but the beauty of the Tidy Task business model is we have the minimum required fixed expenses that any business requires. So we do not have bricks and mortar. So I'm not trying to get past a rent payment for my business every month. We don't have fixed salary W-2 employees, similar to Uber and Lyft. And we work with 1099 contractors, which means when the revenue is earned, then we are paying our largest expense, which is labor. But that situation is always cash flow positive. And then when the fixed expenses that I'm trying to get past every month are in the hundreds of dollars instead of the thousands of dollars,
Wow. Yeah.
it means at micro scale, I can look at my business and say, I'm actually doing this. And yeah, it's still tiny. Like it's month 2 and I have 3 customers, but I'm actually getting close to breaking even my fixed costs because I'm paying for insurance and I'm paying for an anytime mailbox address, and that's my rent for, $25 a month. And what I've tried to do, James, is make entrepreneurship as approachable as it could be for any person. If you can't be an entrepreneur within the Tidy Task franchise model, then entrepreneurship is just not for you, because we are essentially the lowest startup cost business that you can start. But we've done all of the hard work in terms of installing the systems, processes, procedures that that I took, 2.5 years to form and harden and grow. And that's why Michael grew faster than I did. Because for the first, 6 months of my business, I was also building the website. Well, that's done for franchisees. I was also figuring out what is SEO and how does it work for the first
Yeah.
time. That's a part of, what's baked into the system and the model. And and certainly from an operations standpoint. And so um, when I look at how risk averse the business model for Tidy Task is, I feel really bummed for the individuals that listen to Society or listen to the podcast, read the books that are scary and say, oh, I guess I just can't do entrepreneurship because it's too big and scary. It's too much of an upfront investment. And I just don't think I'm cut out for it.
So what is,
Um,
from a financial perspective, I mean, it sounds like things were going well with you to begin with, stepping on, not to begin with, but pretty early on, you were saying things were profitable for you with Tidy Task. What was your financial mindset in deciding to franchise this? Is there, how does the franchise work? Like what is there for you to get out of it as the owner?
yeah. We'll start with how does the franchise work question, and then I'll answer the
Sure.
why did I want to pursue that route personally answer. So the how it works answer is, um, to be a Tidy Task franchisee, it's a $25,000 franchise fee that covers your upfront expenses from training, us building your website, getting all of your systems and back end processes built in so that you're not building the software out for the first time. You're just adding employees and adding your information. You get the Tidy Task mobile app, which is both a customer facing app like Uber, and then we have a cleaner facing app. So our cleaners manager is an application they have on their phone. It's not our owners. Like if our owners are doing their job, making sure the information is getting into the software, then cleaners are getting everything they need from that mobile app. And that's built, it's done, it's proven to work. So it's not something that someone's having to do for the first time. So that 25,000 covers everything that it takes to get started. And then we have an 8% royalty and then a 2% that um, we all have a collective marketing fund so that
Mm.
eventually as we grow national, we have set aside funds that help build a national brand that all of us benefit from.
Okay, cool. That's a pretty cool insight, and seems, I mean, from other things that I've seen people buy into, it's not outlandish. Um,
It's really low, James. So I was at the Denver National Franchise Convention last week. The lowest buy-in, I went to every booth there and I wanted to hear all their pitches, how they worked, what were their pros and cons if I was considered, because I want to know that, how do we become the most attractive offering for potential franchisees? So I walked out of there. The lowest franchise fee that was in that building was $40,000. That franchise fee was also that plus $100,000 of other startup costs. Don't get me
wow.
started on the restaurant concepts that require bricks and mortar, whether it's a lease or a purchase. Um, but they're going to land you between $300,000 and $500,000 to start up, and that's in addition to, for a lot of the restaurant concepts, it was $70,000 to $150,000 of just franchise fee. That is just them teaching you how they make their pizza, and and a little more than that. That's
Sure,
probably
sure.
not a generous description, but
Well, I don't know how generous that is. I mean, or ingenuous, or any, however you want to say it. I mean, I've had this thought recently where the contrast for me is, as someone who grew up in California, In and Out has been wildly consistent no matter where I've seen it, as it has traveled across the states and into different places. The one that's there in Colorado Springs, exact same experience, exact same quality of food as the one that's in Napa, California, that I grew up going to. On the other hand, as a lifelong vegetarian, Taco Bell has been a place that I have frequented my whole life, and I have got to say, there are, even though the flavors are pretty consistent, the way they make the food is wildly inconsistent. The like, I've been to several in the last couple of years where like the fried items taste rancid, like they haven't changed out their oil recently or something. And the customer service element has been the absolute least, well, it's probably the most consistent, where it seems like there's no training at all. It's like they're given a script and hired. And that seems to have been the standard that Taco Bell has gone down to with its franchises now, which has been, again, really disappointing to watch when you have the contrast of something like In and Out and something like Taco Bell, that I think have equally horrible for you yet worthwhile food. Um,
Quick anecdote on that to also differentiate the two there. I just heard recently and confirm this for me because I only grew up going to In and Out every so often, James. But you have to work at In and Out for an entire 12 months before you can actually start making the burgers. You have basically a graduation ceremony where they then say, okay, you've been working here for 12 months, you've gotten your training, now we can have you start making the burgers. And it's a highly sought after, role in the restaurant. And you can see everything that's going on behind the counter back there. It's an
yeah.
environment, and like it's almost electric. Chick-fil-A is similar, but you're right. I mean, this is obviously not an ad for In-N-Out franchise, it, but definitely it's not an ad for the Taco Bell franchise. But I would say from a franchise owner perspective now, the goal of having a franchise is to be able to have that consistency across markets. And Carl is really approachable in how we work together as franchisee and franchisor. Um, so that we can continue to let the rising tide lift both of our ships together. We're constantly trying to make sure, how can we make this process easier and more scalable for not just our own businesses, but the franchising business as a whole.
Yeah.
Because we do want that barrier to entry of being successful with this model to be as low as possible.
Michael, you had reached out to me, Michael, suggesting conversation about a franchise, right? Again, that was the whole Uno reverse of us having this
Mhm.
conversation to begin with. Is there an incentive structure for you in getting more franchise owners in place, and will that exist for other franchise owners?
So I will let Carl talk about others, but we have worked with an organization that provides a finder's fee or extends a finder's fee royalty when they find franchise owners for us. Um, it was always my goal in coming on to be a successful first franchise owner so that I can kind of pave the path for other future franchise owners. So that was always my interest, and Carl knew that from the beginning. Carl generously decided to extend that same finder's fee to myself. Um, One thing that I know Carl and I both really care about is finding like-minded, similar valued people who want to either become an entrepreneur or have been entrepreneurs and want to buy into a successful business. And so for me, when I look around, I realize just like Carl, I've found a really good network of individuals that I've met through my life. And if you read through that message again, I tried to do my absolute best to make sure it's not a sales pitch to anybody. But this, I do believe in what this has to offer for future franchise owners. And so I want to have essentially an army of people who are, when they hear in the back of their head that somebody is interested in becoming a business owner, this is just something in their arsenal. They can say, "Hey, have you talked to Michael or Carl about Tidy Task?" Um, and we've obviously done a lot of marketing in our local area, a lot of business connections and things like that. I'm still running into people from high school and college and previous, networking groups and things like that, where it's like, oh, that's what you're doing now. So, reaching out to you was one avenue for that, and I always want to make sure that I can vouch for people that I tell Carl and say, hey, that this individual would be a fantastic franchise owner.
Yeah, and then there was James. It was like,
Yeah.
well, we're pretty desperate here, but
Well, and
just don't know anyone else who lives in Granbury, Texas.
knowing the network that you have, James, that's why the message read as it did, to say, hey, if you know anybody who is looking for an opportunity like this, not only did you say, sure, I'll think about it, but you invited us on your podcast to be able to talk more about it. So the best response I could have received.
Awesome. Well, like I said yesterday, I'm really looking forward to all 18 people that are going to listen to this,
Absolutely.
6 from each of us, so
Yeah,
minus
yeah.
3 for our mothers, minus 3 for our
But
spouses, and so on.
the only thing I would add, James, is like with franchise marketing systems, a part of their process is once everything's completed, they assign you a broker that they're responsible for generating leads and turning those leads into individuals I have conversations about potentially franchising. I just felt it was fair. Like if Michael is finds people within his own network, like shouldn't he be rewarded the same as this broker is going to be? And if it's coming through Michael, it's not a sales pitch, which it is through the broker.
Mm.
Like it's just a full on like, hey, this is the franchise, this is how it works. But with Michael, like I love how Michael and I met because it's given us multiple layers of trust right out of the gate that if you are working with a complete stranger, there's a 6 to 12 month process in operating things together that the jury's out, right? Until you're really deep into that relationship saying this might or might not work. So the reason I would prefer that future franchisees hear or find us through current franchisees is one, there's already a relationship there. So there's a baseline understanding that this is probably a good human being to work with. Um, and two, the future growth of this franchise will be fully dependent on whether we write consistently franchise success stories or not.
Hmm.
And a successful franchisee is always going to be a more powerful megaphone than any sales force that I could hire and have, out there pitching Tidy Task to random people that are interested in franchising. And that's why the approach. And yeah.
Yeah, I've, I've got to say, it doesn't sound very Scrooge McDuck of you to be running your own business and be willing to share some money down the pipeline. But that's, honestly, that's the experience that I have um, with really every business owner that I've ever interacted with, or have worked for, is there's no intention to be greedy or selfish. Like there's a very clear expectation that, I'm the originator of this idea. I'm the creator of the value that you get to take advantage of. And so I do expect to make the most money in the company, frankly. But, um, but outside of that, the business owners have always been wildly generous to me, and they've always given capitalism a very good name, from my perspective, because again, there is this expectation of who's going to benefit the most. The person that's put in the most risk, the person that sunk their money, that quit a job, that set an 18-month pathway for their family. Um, but it sounds like there's a really good incentive structure for people to make quite a bit of money themselves and not feel like they're just losing it all to you through this. Uh,
I want this business to grow beyond me, James. Like, that's the simple truth. I don't believe that greedy business owners grow big businesses, and it's obvious why. So, I've always believed in leadership. If you want to find good people and you want them to be a part of your organization, you better set up an incentive structure that invites the same level of buy-in that you're at. And I mean, so that's why franchise owners, yeah, would be rewarded on franchise sales, but it's also why I decided to go the franchising route rather than hire a bunch of general managers across the United States and decide to keep 100% of profits of all Tidy Task operations but that really goes back to the whole reason I start, like the reason that Michael knows this is never going to change is because he knows why I started this business, and it's not to make money. It's so that I can be dad.
you both have mentioned family in this. And Carl, you mentioned how your wife was in that like finally mode when you did it. Michael, how has family been for you as far as informing what you've done, what
Yeah.
you're doing now?
Okay. So the long story shortened to a concise manner. When my son was born, it was an awesome experience in that it happened in the hospital I was working at. So, literally, the teams that I was working with every single day were taking care of my wife and my son through that experience. And I'm very grateful for that because, in a lot of ways, they saved my wife's life. There's just extensive complications with um, the labor process for her. My son was just a champ. He was like, no issues whatsoever. But she had about a 12-month recovery process that she had to endure before she really got back to baseline mobility
Wow.
and health and everything. 6 of those months were quite intense. And I had not planned, like the absent-minded husband that I was. I had not planned to take a ton of time off when my wife, had my son, but there was a huge need for priority realignment when all of that took place, and so I ended up taking, I want to say, about a month and a half off of work, and just in some ways being chauffeur, being the support system, making sure that I was there for my wife, helping take care of my son while she was going to appointments. Um, And during that time, I realized that there was almost nothing I'd rather be doing than being dad, being husband, taking care of my family that God has given me. Um, and I had plenty of opportunities that year as well, professionally, that, conferences and different things like that, that helped me continue to walk down that mindset path of like, what would a different life look like so that I can put family in the box that exists above career. And specifically went to a conference for dads in October of 2022, and I heard a speaker essentially talk about the benefits of entrepreneurship, and it was a very small part of his talk. I ended up talking with that speaker afterwards and realized like this is something that I really want to go for. So sat my wife down at a coffee shop when I came home, and basically I laid out a plan and said, within 3 years, I'm not going to be working on the career I'm working on anymore. I'm going to have several streams of income, be running my own business, and um, be able to prioritize family above the process of making money and career and all that. She also said finally, and um, she actually reminded me of when we first got married. She told me, I think God has in mind for us to work together on something, and I'm not sure what that is yet. Um, and so when she said that, I realized I had her full support, and it gave me a lot of space to be able
Wow.
to figure out how we could go about this process. 3 years was the goal, 3 months was reality. And I am very grateful for that because I wouldn't have it any other way. These last 12 months, really since the origin of that conversation, have been a whirlwind. They've been super quick, but I've taken life a lot slower. Um, and I know I would have had much less time with my family and being able to prioritize these things that matter most to me if I had been doing the same work that I was doing previously. So,
I kind of skimmed over this earlier, but so you've been doing this for 12 months now. Um, how long did it take for you? You mentioned that you're reinvesting the dollars from the business back into the business right now,
mhm.
but technically, how long did it take you to be profitable?
Yeah. So, in specifically in February of 2023 is when we launched Tidy Task. I think in Daytona. I want to say our first service was in mid March. So, Carl and I met in February at a coffee shop in Sanford, Florida, and basically he trained me on all the systems at the time, which have now changed for the better in a lot of ways. So 3 months prior to that, that 3 month process of taking on this new world of career, um, that was essentially me working myself towards as much, maybe, from an outside looking in, it might have looked like quiet quitting. It might have looked like just like trying to figure out how much I could in an ethical way squeeze out of my employer in order to have a little bit more runway. And through that process, the timeline worked out really well to where I believe my last day with my employer was about 5 days prior to meeting with Carl and really officially launching Tidy Task. So the first 3 months were a slog, I would say. And I think that that is reasonable. In fact, I've heard, we hear the negative side of things, but I've heard the average for a new entrepreneur is honestly, again, around that 2 to 3 year mark of really figuring out, is this going to work?
Hmm.
After about 3 months, I started to look and see that, okay, if I invested no money in growing the business and just let this chunk of services that we're providing to my local area um, just kind of run through my account, like I would make money month after month. However, it would really limit my growth. So one of the ways that I've reinvested that money is paying pretty good amounts of it into Yelp ads so that locally we're the top option when people look in Yelp and try to figure out home cleaning services or laundry services. They'll put in a request for us, and we've got quite a few of our customers through that. I also
Cool.
invest some of my time and some of my money into local networking groups, Chamber of Commerce, 1 Million Cups is another cool group that I've been able to attend and talk about my business at. Um, and to be able to, instead of me going out and trying to replicate myself and continue to be the driver for building the business up. I wanted to be able to pay for some automation so that I could literally just sit in front of my computer and watch the Yelp requests come in, put my templated response in there, and turn it into recurring services that can provide for my cleaners and our business. So
Nice.
that's a model that I think is going to, I'm going to continue to follow that model so that the snowball can continue to work. But it took about that 3 months to be able to see that I had the ability to reinvest back into marketing the business.
Okay, cool. And has there ever been any wavering from your family perspective of, is this the right thing for us or not? Or has that been steady?
No, I think it's just there is the volatility, there's the variability of starting a new business. For me, this is, I just see how the business works. I see the model that Carl has created, and there are other levers that I can move if it starts to get to some form of concerning level. I think for me, I have confidence in specifically Tidy Task and the business model that was created. I just want to make sure that I am doing my due diligence to like keep that engine moving forward. My wife has been feeling the same way. Carl's also given her the opportunity to run the social media for Tidy Task. And I
And
do.
she's killing it, by the way. Killing it. Yeah.
What are the links, or how do people connect with the social media for Tidy Task?
Yeah,
Or,
at Tidy Task LLC, pretty much on
Mhm.
everything. So Instagram,
okay,
Facebook. We have a really unfortunate TikTok, so don't go there.
it can't be
But
worse than mine.
the things that Andrea has taken over and fully run, I was literally laughing in bed last night with Molly watching. I think it's Meg Ryan. Was that Meg Ryan, Michael, doing her dance
Uh,
in a meme about how nice it is when you delegate 8 hours of chores in a week.
it's specifically dancing, Dirty Dancing. I don't know the actress's name, but
I don't, I don't know actresses, obviously, but it was hilarious.
Your
And
wives are proud. That's
yes, they are.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. So Carl, what about from your perspective? So how has family informed what you've done and what you're doing now, beyond what you've already
it's
said?
in, yeah, no, I would just say, James, like family is the whole reason that I embarked on this journey and is the reason that I've approached it the way that I have. There's a way that this business could be optimized by me to make as much money as humanly possible in as short amount of time as possible. Um, and that's just not how I've approached it. It's why we franchised. It's why we're generous with how we approach employment. So I pay top of market to my cleaners in Denver because I don't have bricks and mortar costs, because I don't have many of the fixed expense costs that my competitors do. I pass a lot of that on to the people that work with us. Um, but back to that 6 months pregnant Molly, us deciding what the next chapter of life is, I ran probably 5 business models past Molly, and bless her heart, she stuck through every single one of them and was fully engaged and gave her thoughts. and opinions, despite how harebrained probably some of those ideas were. She was fully supportive of any and all of them. But Tidy Task continually rose to the top of that group because it generated the life story that we wanted to be living 5 years from that point, which is one where we were mom and dad first. We didn't have to watch for 2 to 3 years and cross our fingers that the money we invested up front actually came back to us eventually, like many of my franchise competitors ask people to do. No, just, yeah, 300,000. It's a small investment compared to doing your own thing. And just wait, like in 3 to 5 years, you'll have it back. It's like, dude, the whole world changes in 3 to 5 years. And when you have kids, the whole world changes in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so the main design drivers for the Tidy Task business model, number one, I wanted it to generate freedom of time. So that meant for the first 6 months I built Tidy Task, any system or process that I could not do from a cell phone or an internet connection on a laptop, I killed that idea and went a different route. And so now I have a business that I'm going to be in December, I'm going to be in Florida with Michael training a new franchisee, and I'm going to be cleaning 15 houses in Denver that week. And that is how it needs to happen. I mean, well, you're on break, and we're like, I was telling Michael about yesterday, for me, it was 4.5 hours at Kids Empire with my son climbing up and jumping into ball pits and doing the slide. I wanted a business that I could be there and I could also be confident about what is happening within the operations of the business. And that's what I built. And now Molly and I constantly look at each other, and she knows, like, for both of us, there's no going back. Like, there's just no way humanly possible that I could not be depressed if I went back into the corporate life after seeing what life can be right now. And the fact that now Molly and I do all of our touristy things or fun things on weekdays. You know how much more fun something is, James, when like typically there's 10,000 people trying to do it and you go on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. and 1,000 people are there trying to do it, and it's cheaper and more fun. And like,
you're asking the right person that question, because I grew up as a homeschooler, so life was like, we had season passes to Six Flags and we'd go on a Tuesday in the middle of the day.
yes.
And unless there was a field trip there, it was like every ride was a 10-minute wait. And you just had to budget your school time around that. And my parents took us, rather than paying for private school, they took us on trips. And so we went to Italy one year for 3 weeks, something like that. And that was a lot of our history and geography. I mean, we were learning about Europe and how it's laid out and what are the different parts of Italy and what's the history in each city we went to. But it was super off season. I mean, there was no one there. People were looking at us funny, and not no one. There were random tourist groups, but I went back there once during the summer, and it was unbelievable how different it was. And the main plug that I would say for the touristy times is usually they're cleaning less of the sculptures and they're not as like necessarily covered up. But yeah, I totally resonate with that freedom of, it's amazing to go check out things at times other people aren't there.
And Carl and I have talked multiple times that one of the totally underrated wins about running your own schedule is the opportunity for day dates with your spouse. Because there's just something to be said about a day date, which for a lot of reasons we don't have to get into in this podcast, is so much more romantic to me than an evening date. So
maybe I'll have to do a separate one with your wife and find out if she prefers evenings, though.
Yeah, you should ask.
I'll get back to you along with our 18 listeners. Carl, though, I wasn't meaning to
Yeah.
totally cut off what you're saying about family, but I mean, so you guys are going out experiencing things at times of the day, 4.5 hours with your kid in a single day. Most people don't get that in a week.
Well, and I mean, not to go dark side on you, but here's the thing, James. Like the question I was constantly trying to answer when I was in the corporate life is, can you have it all? Can I be the dad that I know that I want to be? I know that I've been called to be, and be the level of leader that I think I'm able to be in terms of what I've learned about business and like what I've learned about managing and leading people. Um, but the unfortunate story that I watched unfold hundreds of times with many peers that I shared C-suites with was, you just start to sacrifice and then you start to rationalize. And I'm all for sacrifice and hard work and all those, American values that make capitalism great. But the depressing stories that I consistently watched were the individuals that started with family is my most important thing. And then, well, actually, the only way that I'm most valuable to my family is if I'm bringing them more money and giving them the childhood I never had.
Mm,
Here's
yeah.
here's the unique perspective I had, James. I was working with all of their dads, and my wife was the youth pastor for all of their kids.
Wow.
And the stories that she would hear is not like the story that I wanted my kid to have. And
Wow.
I think God put Molly and I together for many, many reasons, but from a career and life perspective, I wouldn't have gotten that context without her. And um, it gave me all the clarity that I needed to jump away from a large salary, cons- you know, guarantee of comfort for the rest of my life. But I just didn't want it because I saw the storylines that unfolded. You all know a pastor's kid. You probably know a CEO kid. The fact that Molly and I were looking at a situation of saying, are we going to have a pastor's kid and a CEO? Like that, there's no way that human being will be normal in any way, shape, or form. Like, we've got to give this kid a chance. And, I
I
think, yeah.
it just seems so wrong to me, and I agree that seems to be a norm. Like the norm of the pastor's kid is they usually are a little more atypical in the youth group, and the reality of a CEO's kid is they do seem to wrestle with more of like we have a really highfalutin family with standards that I have to push back against, and I don't really get the attention that I need, because mom or dad is always busy from their C-suite position. I think what I wrestle with is I do feel like I've seen it done well on both the pastor's kid front and the C-suite kids front. And I would agree that it seems to be more the anomaly. I think one thing that I wrestle with as like having the perspective of it wouldn't bother me to end up back in a technically 9 to 5 job. I just don't plan on doing it. I still wrestle with that. How can you do it right? Because for the majority of Americans, again, you're talking about, we've mentioned this several times, or you've mentioned this several times, trading your time for money. To a certain extent, we're all doing that always. And I don't think that there's inherently a lack of merit to that. Um, in fact, from a Christian perspective, I believe what Solomon wrote when he said, one of the greatest things you can do is find joy in the work that you're doing. How do you marry that up? Like, what would the answer be for today's C-suite and today's pastors?
It's a great question, James. And the reality is that the answer is different for each individual. That's why I would never step onto any platform and say it's not possible because I didn't do it. Well, no, that's not the case. However, I'm like an odds person. I look at that's why I love business, because you look at strategies and things, and you say, well, if we do this, it has this percent chance of being successful or not. And I just look how often that outcome was in, within the C-suite and within the pastor's kid scenario. And I didn't walk away saying, so that's impossible for us. But I think I walked away saying, like, do I want to fight these odds all my life with the thing that I index as the most important part of my life story? And if
Yeah, I got you.
the career piece is gonna put this one at risk potentially, I'm just not going to go there. James, I consistently feel that, like, the reason God put me in a CEO role at 27 was so that I could see what it looks like at the top of the ladder, and live the rest of my life in peace, knowing that's not where I wanted to be. Like, I am that individual that sometimes, to a fault, will pursue success and wants to work hard to accomplish something, and point at it and say, look, like, we won, we did well, like, I'm competitive.
Yeah.
And um, I think I, like most of my peers in the C-suite, might have spent 30 or 40 years pursuing that top pedestal just to prove to myself that I could do it.
Hmm.
The unfortunate story that I saw over and over again, and happened to me in a lot of ways, is individuals reach that top rung of the ladder. They say, I made it. I've worked so hard. Remember all these sacrifices that I've been saying 30 years. I've been working and I missed a few ball games, but it's all for this. Like, I made it to the
Yeah.
moment. And then they sit down in at their chair, and a month into it, they say, wait a minute, I was here for 60 hours this week. In my last role, I was only sitting in this chair for 40 hours. Oh, now I have politics. I didn't have to deal with that, but now actually everything that I do everywhere I go is scrutinized. Not just what I do in my job, but what I do at church or don't do at church, or what my kids do at church or don't do at church, or my spouse does. And I've watched so many individuals in the C-suite look around and say, this is not what it is cracked up to be. But the storyline typically is, I worked for this for 30 years and I can't go back now.
Mhm.
So at least I'm getting the income that this provides. I've already missed the ball games. I've already missed the recitals. And so this is life. And it's sad, Jane. Like, I watched it happen. It wasn't just one, this is countless times. And man, I couldn't let that be my story.
Yeah.
I would I would say too, like, uh, Carl, I don't know if I've told you this as well, but seeing you make the decision to live differently, both of us were, heavy on mentorship in our career building, and I know both of us have talked about seeking out that person who could figure out this balance or this integration of prioritizing family in the place that it should be, prioritizing faith in the place that it should be. But um, over and over, I've gotten disappointed. I know you got disappointed too. But you know what was the bright, shining spot through all of that is I was able to look at Carl and I was able to see him go out there and make a choice that was unlike anyone else who had given me the time of day for mentorship. And I could look at him and say, this man was honest with me about what he valued. And he actually made a completely different decision about his life to prioritize his family, to prioritize his faith and the life story he wanted to write. And that gave me the courage to be able to do the same thing. Now, I don't say all that to butter up my franchise or anything like that. But, there is something that is pretty magnificent about seeing somebody be brave and courageous and seeking out a different life. And so, Carl, just sharing that with you, that was amazingly impactful on me. And it was the reason I reached out to you when I was going through some similar conversations. Um, I continually think of the phrase that a couple of my friends and I talk about all the time. A successful man does not come home with a pile of money in an empty house. He prioritizes those things that really matter most. And when he's looking at his, when he's at his deathbed and he's looking around the room, he's not seeing a bunch of business owners that he, donated money to. He's not seeing all the people that he bought friendships with. No, he's seeing his family that he cares about and that love him and that want to be there and celebrating him. Unfortunately, Carl and I know of so many stories, and I'm sure we all do, of those individuals that by the time they get to that point in their life, there's no one surrounding them besides the people that they were connected with from a business perspective. And, my legacy is too important to me in my faith and in my family to be able to let that negative outcome take place. So if I'm going to invest my time, my money, my efforts into things of value, I'm going to look to my family first because that impact will be far greater than any amount of money that I make or any amount of donations that I give or generosity that I can provide to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I've kept both of you here almost 2 hours now, and I still want to ask about fitness. And I just want to know, how has your personal fitness informed what you've done and what you are doing now?
Yeah, I'll jump in because mine will be really short. It's a good one to end with because, unlike many end of sermons, this will just be short and succinct. Um, I
Do I tell
love
your wife
soccer.
that?
That's like, yeah, I mean, you're certainly welcome to. I don't know how it will go, but in any case, I love soccer. That's like my preferred outlet of physical exercise. Wherever I move, I am always looking for a pickup game. I just moved from Parker, Colorado to Loveland, Colorado, so I get to start that joyous, awkward process of waltzing onto a random field with strangers and them wondering if I'm terrible or good or so that's in my near future. Um, and again, my wife is now 8 months pregnant, and I've been taking the sympathy weight thing really, really seriously, guys. So, um, I'm right there with her in my own version of pregnancy, and that's my current fitness situation.
That's kind of you to share the weight.
Yeah, the downside that I experienced with that was that sympathy pregnancy belly that the guys get. The baby comes and the wife's belly goes away, but yours doesn't. It's I'm
Yeah.
working on that now.
So I
But
do have so the shameless plug that I'm going to make here is for Patrick Torres and Fortress Training. He's a buddy of mine that lives locally. So I'll be paying him many visits in the near future at his gym. He's a personal trainer and owns his own gym, and I'm sure he'll help get me straight.
awesome. That's very high on my list of things I want to invest in once I'm profitable. Um, I wrote a post about basically how not having someone in my fitness corner. I've focused on having mentors and coaches in all the other aspects of my life for my whole life. And for some reason, fitness has always been one where I thought I can do it myself. Even though I'm not doing it myself, I can do it myself. And the post I just wrote was how, as of February or December of this last year, I hit 57 pounds higher than my college low. And I looked it, I felt it. It was like huffing and puffing going on a brisk walk. It was bad. And I'm down about 20 pounds since then right now, and feel way
Nice.
healthier. But I never had to get there to begin with. I just never had someone in my corner. And so I'm really hoping to find that person as soon as possible. But again, once I'm profitable. Michael, what about you?
So, COVID was a huge eye opener for me, fitness wise. I basically learned that without college intramurals, I had absolutely no discipline from a fitness perspective. And there were a couple of short spurts that I did that kind of got me to a better baseline. So, definitely not a prescription for everybody, but 75 hard was a good discipline builder for me. Um, Short explanation of that is basically 75 days of keeping track of specific disciplines for your health and mindset, and making sure you don't miss any of those days, or else you have to start back at the beginning of the 75 days. Um, in completing that a couple times in the past couple of years, I've built more of a consistent discipline around fitness. Um, Lately, my discipline has started to wane, but this is where I'm going to really be grateful to my wife again, because she is by far the best cook and best baker in every category. She makes the best food, which is awesome and dangerous. But she has been intentional about feeding us food that would help sustain our weight. She's even helped me with, I struggled with portion control when we first got married, and that generated about 30 pounds post marriage and everything, post wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but over the past 6 months, though my exercise has been pretty variable, she's been able to feed us at a level where I've like stayed within the same 5 pound range. And that sort of thing, I don't believe would have been possible in the life that we were living in before, because it does take her time. She has, you know, a little almost 2 year old pulling at her pants leg if I'm not watching him during the times in which she makes meals, which is one of her favorite things to do. And so what do? I try to put these two things together and take him out for a walk while she gets to have her me time and make amazing food for us that keeps us healthy and keep going. So getting to do those things and not have to come home at 6 from work for a 8 o'clock dinner after he goes to bed and everything. We've been able to have that as kind of some family health disciplines of getting in regular walks together and having meals together and things like that. So
It's great.
definitely, we all have to make decisions based on the seasons that we're in, whether you're expecting a child or different things like that. But I think the lifestyle that we're living has enabled a little bit more of um, intentionality in that area, and it's something that I know she appreciates as well.
Yeah. Michael and Carl, I really appreciate both of you coming on and having this now 2 hour conversation. Congratulations. I think you've set the record for the longest I've ever gone here. And it's been really cool to hear this. And I think what's been neat for me is to see all of the passion that both of you have, that really is Tidy Task is what seems to be enabling you to live your passions, as opposed to Tidy Task itself being the passion.
Bingo.
And that's a really cool story to tell. And thank you for joining me on this podcast to tell that story. So let me put one final ask out there for the two of you, which is, this is your last chance to make any plugs about who you are, and again, how people can contact you if they want to learn more, whether it's to ask you to be a business coach for them, or specifically, I'm sure, to become a franchise owner for Tidy Task. So, Carl, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Best way to get a hold of me, Carl at tidytask.com. It's really simple. If you're a little shy and want to learn more before reaching out, tidytask.com/franchise. That's the best way to figure out like how much does it cost and what are the steps and how does it all work. And I think the last plug that I would make to someone listening to this is like, bottom line, like if you believe in yourself, this is a path for you. And we've made entrepreneurship as approachable as it can be. And um, another reason that I went the franchising route instead of other routes is I love coaching. Like one of my favorite times every single week is me and Michael getting together for an hour and just talking business. How's it going? How are we both learning from each other on marketing and operations and HR? And what are you trying? This is what I'm trying. And I would be happy to do that with any individual, whether they're a franchisee or not, if that would be valuable. But certainly, as growth happens, my time is going to be given to franchisees that are trying to grow their business because we're all working on the same problem together. And frankly, two brains is better than one. Three brains is about to be better than two. And when we connect next year, hopefully 10 brains will be better than the current two that you're chatting with.
All right. Well, and to anyone out there, I do want to make the plug on Michael's behalf. Michael's the one that got this whole thing together by reaching out to me to begin with. So be sure to, if someone is a mutual acquaintance of ours or wouldn't have found out about this without you, Michael, how do they get a hold of you to try and give you some credit for this connection?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have plenty of in common similar values, people, James. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone found us through you and found Carl and everything. And like I said, the most important thing to me is that we find those people, and this could be a plug and play solution that works well for their family. But if you want to get a hold of me, you can use the same email as Carl's, just Michael at tidytask.com. We don't try to make it complicated. So maybe that's a preview of how it is to run a Tidy Task franchise too.
And that's Carl with a C and Michael the way it's normally spelled.
Yes.
So
you got it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, any final words?
No, thank you, James. This is awesome. You're doing some cool work. I can't wait to watch all the other clips, and I'll make my wife watch this one. So it's
Yeah. I forgot to mention at the beginning, those 18 views, they're going to drop off by the end to the three of us and our wives. So,
there we go.
And frankly, I won't even make my wife watch all this. So, All right. Appreciate you guys. We will wrap it up right here, and I'm going to close it out in 3, 2, 1.
But
I feel like I'm like sitting too stiff.
yeah, it's like back to that 9 to 5 Zoom call life. Sit up straight, be in the light, all those fun things.
Should we do anything funny to make it in the bloopers?
He's here all day.
This is my son's.
I mean,